Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Harinama Sankirtan Ki.
Krishna Kripa Prabhu in his true form.
From Alachua, Florida, this is Nectar Talks.
In collaboration with Krishna.com.
And in service to our Bhakti community.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to another installment of our Nectar Talks podcast here in Alachua, Florida. Today I have a devotee I've been really looking forward to having on the podcast, Krishna Kripa Prabhu. I've always had just this wonderful place in my heart for you, even though I never got a chance to really get to know you. You've been so kind to let me serve you many times in your travels, so very grateful for that. So yeah, I really look forward to speaking with you today and hearing a little bit about your, I'm sure, magical life in Krishna consciousness.
Yes, it's all magical.
Indeed. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, for starters. What your family life looked like when you were a young boy, and eventually, I'd love to get into how you got into Krishna consciousness.
Well, I was born in upstate New York, near Albany, and I had a mother and father and a sister, and my father was an author. He wrote 4 books about hiking in the Adirondack Mountains and 1 book about New York State government. He was actually a writer for the Gannett News Service, and he wrote articles that were put in a lot of papers, especially in New York, but other places too. And then he unfortunately he passed away when I was just 12 years old.
Oh, really?
And after that, my mother, she became a peace activist, and when she had some free time, and we were brought up as Quakers, which is one of the Protestant groups, and it's very much towards social activism and peace activism, and she really resonated with that. And in 1976, we were on the Continental Walk for Disarmament and Social Justice, which they had people walking from San Francisco to Washington and from Boston to Washington, and some people walking from Albany to New York, and then those people would go to Washington. So
it's interesting you mention that your mother was an activist, because my mother is very much an activist. It's like it's a kind of blood, wouldn't you say? Right? I mean, it's like they have that in them, to really fight for some causes that are really dear to them, and assisting in marches and all these things. So that's interesting.
Yeah, even when she was 99 on Mother's Day, she went to the Grannies for Peace rally.
So tell me just real quick, activism for peace. How would you define that?
Well, there's all these. Well, it really got going, I think, during the Vietnam War.
Okay.
A lot of people thought, "Why are we in this war?" And a lot of devotees actually were, not really excited about it.
Yeah. So specifically in relation to the wars that are going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the development of weapons, different kinds of,
Got it.
especially offensive weapons.
Yeah. So that makes sense. Really in correlation with the war industry, you could call it. Or,
what they call it, the military-industrial complex or
right?
something.
Yeah. Okay. So you grew up with your mom, who became a strong activist, and what was that upbringing like with your sister and your single mom after you were 12? Were you, content growing up, or?
Well, I was sort of like, I was really into science, and I'd play with my chemistry set, and I'd read this encyclopedia. And then when I got to high school, they had computers, and I really resonated with computers. And I spent all my study halls on the computer. And my ninth grade year in the summer, I audited a course at State University of New York at Albany in computer science. And I really got, so that's, I skipped out on a lot of the degrading things people did during high school because of my absorption in computers, so that was actually
You were
good,
saved by the computer.
Yeah.
I wish I was a computer geek.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we used to travel before my father passed away. Like every summer, we would travel to different places. We went to Washington and Oregon. We went to Switzerland and Austria. We went to Key West for Christmas one time where it was warm. And yeah, he really liked to travel, but we didn't really do so many things as a family after that.
Okay. All right. And what spurred you in the direction of spirituality? When did that happen?
Well, I would say as like maybe in late high school and in college, I think my father passed away when I was 12, and my grandmother passed away when I was 13, and when I ran into the Hare Krishnas and they told me the world was the material world was a miserable place, it actually made sense, And in between those two traumas, I broke my leg skiing, So
okay.
I had some, I'd experienced some of the misery of the material world, and I was checking out different spiritual groups. My cousin got me to read Siddhartha, which was the first Eastern thing. And then I read like Autobiography of a Yogi and Be Here Now. And there was a series called Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. And that said, if you're serious about self-realization, you should read Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata. So because my mom was an activist, I ended up going to this, it was a anti-nuclear rally attended by 200,000 people in New York.
Wow.
On September 23rd, 79. I looked it up online recently. I didn't know the actual date, and I didn't know the magnitude of it. But so I went to this thing, and somebody gave me a card that said Bhagavad Gita classes, 340 West 55th Street.
Wow.
And I'd taken time off from school, and I was going to hitchhike along the West Coast and see a friend of mine who was my most spiritual friend, who I used to meditate with, who graduated the previous year, and I was going to go with some other friends. And I had a day to kill before my bus, and I picked up this card and said, "Oh, Bhagavad Gita classes," and 55th Street, and I looked at the street sign. It was like 48th or something. It was very close by. So I went to the temple, and there was this person, Lochanananda, who had an office right next to the temple room, and he showed me Prabhupada's books, and I was glancing through Science of Self-Realization, and Prabhupada seemed to actually understand what religion was all about, and that there was certain things you could do to get to a certain level of consciousness, and it seemed it was very inspiring, actually. That it seemed like to have a real grasp on the essence of religion. And but I was just and I didn't have a place to stay in New York, and they said I could stay there that night. And the bus I was going to take ran every Saturday, but it broke down, so they couldn't fix it to Monday. And the Bhakta leader was Niranjana Swami, who was a brahmachari then. But actually, before he became the Boston Temple president, he was the Bhakta leader in New York. Once he told the Lithuanian devotees, they asked him what temples he lived in. He said, "I only lived in Boston just 1 year. I went to New York to pick up Ram Roy and Krishna Kripa." Yeah. So he said, if you go out to the West Coast, you'll do the same old hackneyed and materialistic activities you've been doing back here. Better you live in the temple and see how much spiritual advancement you can make. And it seemed like a good argument, because I understood that wherever you go, your consciousness goes with you. So just by changing your location, you're not going to, uplift yourself in a serious way. So, but my friends weren't interested in, living in an ashram. And apparently it was a difficult decision for me because like 20 or 30 years later, Niranjana Swami said that I was the hardest person he ever convinced to move into the temple.
Really?
And he had to pray to Krishna.
Wow. I just wanted to give a little appreciation for what you said, that you had experienced some of the difficulties of life in the material world, and that's what allowed you to appreciate what you found in the books that you came upon. And it's so easy to lament about these difficulties, but look at that. That was such a clear example that if you hadn't had that, you may not have appreciated it as much, right?
Yeah, I would have, like my sister does. She tends to think that the devotees are so pessimistic because they talk about these.
Right.
Yeah, but actually we talk about the alternative.
Yeah. And also, you mentioned the passing of your grandmother. I just want to make a little side note. I don't know if you remember this, but when my grandmother passed away, my father's mom, I had as all devotees, such a desire that she might go in the middle of a kirtan. But she told me and my dad, like, when you guys better not do the Krishna thing. I want the space the way I want it. But of course, we did whatever we could, some bhajans around her and all that. But him and I were kind of, sharing the responsibility in that last week of taking care of her. And I kind of had finished my shift. And by that time, she was in her apartment on 60th Street, right at the corner of Central Park by Columbus Circle. And she was in the phase where she was no longer speaking, basically just laying in bed in her final breaths of a few more days or whatever it was. And I had this strong lamentation that, I wish she could, have that departure surrounded by devotees. And so I took a break from my shift. My father took over, and I decided, it was a heavy time, and I decided, let me go clear my head and go walk in Central Park. So I go, and right at the entrance of Central Park, who's there? The kirtan, and you were there. And so I decided, let me sit here and just, obviously, I'm not going to go walk. I want to be with the devotees, and my grandmother's passing away. And then I decided to turn on I called my dad, and I put the video call, and I said, put the video call on Grandma, and I'll put the video call on the kirtan. And sure enough, she was in the kirtan.
That's fine.
And then on top of that, you also gave me a plate of prasadam.
Oh.
And so when I went back to the apartment, I even gave her a little bit of prasadam.
Wow.
So, that was very special, and I just thought I'd share that.
It's wonderful how Krishna
You were a
makes
part of
special
that.
arrangements.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So, okay, so you end up, thanks to Niranjana Prabhu at the time's prayers, you move into the temple. And I guess let me jump ahead a little bit. You're a lifelong brahmachari, all right? It's easy to more or less. What was that like a conscious decision? If that's not too personal of a question.
Well, I was, I guess I didn't have like a lot of happy experiences with male-female relationships either. So that was another thing that I wasn't, it's something I could relate to, some of the negative, features about that. I just remember a very funny encounter. I went home for Thanksgiving one time I think it was when I was 27 or so, and my mother was asking me about whether I was going to get married. And she was widowed, and my aunt was widowed, and my cousin was divorced. So it occurred to me that they were all married, but they're not married now. Mm-hmm. So I asked them, which did they like better, being married or as they were before, or not being married? And they all said they liked not being married better. So then I said, well, why do you want me to get married?
That's so great.
So no, they couldn't say anything. So.
It's so funny you say that, because my mother, she pretty much, my parents separated and she was remarried for some time, but she's 76 now, and most of her life was on her own. And she says the same thing, that, she was just happier not married. And it's true, we can, I can, it's a lot of negotiating when you're married.
Yeah.
There's not a single thing you can do without, it's a decision that needs to be made as a couple.
So I that's how I was thinking when I was 27. And then when I was 30, I thought, I should decide once and for all whether I'm going to be a brahmacharya or get married. So I decided I would ask some senior devotees.
Okay.
So I asked, there was 2 swamis living in San Diego. One was Umapati Swami,
Yeah.
and one was the Mukunda Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
And then Druta Karma was there also. He was a Grihasta, and the other 2 were swamis. So I decided I would ask him. And the swamis, I asked them, do you think that you're better swamis because you went through that, But they didn't really answer that. They didn't say yes, I'm so glad I did. I'm a much better swami than if I didn't,
Yeah.
And they were just sort of talking about the practicalities of it. Well, if you get married, then you have to have some way of maintaining yourself, and you have different responsibilities.
Yeah,
But it was interesting to me that they weren't fanatic for it or fanatic against it.
Right.
They were just sort of matter of fact about
Yeah,
it, which
yeah,
was
yeah.
interesting.
And that's kind of why I bring it up, and I apologize if it's a little bit personal to just say, when did you decide? But I'm fascinated by the fact that, these are 2 very different ashrams, Grihasta, Brahmachari, but they are still completely in line as far as the goal is the same.
Right.
The goal is to learn to love Krishna, reestablish our eternal identity with Krishna through the process of a particular lifestyle.
Right.
And so, I'm hoping we can maybe just kind of compare notes a little bit in this conversation of how, there's so much that we learn through these very different ashrams. And I love that word ashram because it sanctifies the life
Right.
that we're in.
Yeah.
It says that the life itself, everything that's part of this lifestyle is sanctified when we look at it as an ashram. So, but I appreciate how it kind of came up for you, that it made sense, based on what your parents were saying.
That's not the complete story.
Okay, what else?
Well, people get involved in high school and college with male-female relationships, but there was girls who were attracted to me, and there was girls I was attracted to, but there weren't really any girls. There was never really a mutual attraction sort of situation. But I ended up somehow or other I got attracted to, when I was 32, I got attracted to this girl in San Diego. And then I had to figure out what I was going to do, whether I was going to be a brahmacharya, whether I was going to get married. And I couldn't have any kind of relationship with this girl, unless I was actually going to get married to her, So I decided to, to experiment being engaged to this girl. So I learned a few things about what male relationships are like, how much it complicates your life, and how it adds a certain amount of unpredictability to your life, which was very challenging for me. Like, for example, it's hard for me to be on time for my appointments, but when you factor in another person, it's even harder.
Right.
And, different things. And I really liked my sadhana, and I really liked my service, and I didn't like to have other things that were getting in. So it was sort of... So I learned some things about that. And that was before I came to Alachua, because some people wonder how I could be brahmacharya in Alachua.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, all this...
the land of the Grihasta ashram.
All the swamis who came through, I would say, Mars, could you tell me how I can be brahmacharya in Alachua? And Bhakti Purushottam Swami said, we should be asking you how you can be brahmacharya in Alachua. But because I had that experience before I came to Alachua, I sort of knew. So I realized two things. One, I didn't want to marry her, and the other, I didn't really want to get married because I couldn't imagine anyone who would be so nice that it would make up for all the challenges, you know. And I also felt it was sort of like, you know, arrogance for me to think that, you know, that I was such a person that somebody would really want to, you know, that they would consider it in their self-interest to like fulfill my desires, you know. That's like sort of the contrary to the Vaishnava humility, you know. So that was another thing. So at any rate, so a year. Oh, this is another interesting thing here. So I decided what I'll do is, because I'm not a real brahmachari. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten entangled with this girl. I'm just going to wear white until I'm 50, and then I'm going to take sannyas. And then my guru wrote me out of the blue and said, well, now that this girl broke up with you, you have to decide whether you want to get married or whether you want to be a brahmachari. So after that traumatic experience, I just decided that there's only one choice, and that was going back to being a brahmachari. But I wrote him that I see that I'm making advancement, because when my girlfriends, formerly when my girlfriends broke up with me, I would get drunk. But now I take Mahaprasad and I go on Harinam. And he wrote me, I approve of your program of Harinam therapy.
That's
so,
great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. You know, I think it's a really beautiful insight. And there's a crowd out there that if they happen to watch this podcast, that I'm thinking about. And that's, you know, like the young brahmacharis we see at Krishna House, and how I love seeing how many young devotees are taking to at least the phase of being a brahmachari and getting that full-on training and not getting caught up in, you know, those relationships, even though for most of them, I would say that's eventually what they turn to. You know, is there anything you would say to those who would consider being a brahmachari for some time, and those who may consider, hey, should I do this long term? I mean, you've done a really great job at sharing your experience, but when you know, if you had something to say to those who are brahmacharis, say at the Krishna House, what's your advice for them?
Well, it's really a question of being in the right ashram. That's the most important thing, and you have to figure out whether you're more suited to being a brahmacharya or being a grihastha. I really don't like economic development, and I'm a very unsocial person, so I felt that I would be implicated in a lot more social things than I really want to be, just because of my nature, you know. And that although there's a certain amount of pleasure in the male-female interaction, it's not so great that I'm willing to sacrifice my sadhana or doing some. Basically, if you actually even to have an intimate relationship with just a friend, you have to be willing to do what your friend wants at least maybe half the time, you know. Yeah. But I like to do my own thing so much. I have many acquaintances, but there's like no one who's like, you know, that I always do things with, because, you know, they want to do their thing and I want to do my thing. So I'm so intent on doing my own thing. So if you're like too intent on doing your own thing, then it's like a disservice to get married, because, you know, you won't be actually able to give proper attention to the people you're supposed to be taking care of. You know? So, yeah. But some people, they are very social and they're really good at interacting with women, and some people, even as brahmacharis, are very good at interacting with children. So maybe that is the better ashram for them, and they can be a real asset, you know, encouraging the ladies and the kids in their practice. You know.
Oh, that's very practical. Thank you. And you know, to go further into this lifestyle that you've chosen, I just picked you up at Depot Park, and I have so many thoughts that are coming to mind as I'm getting to know you a little bit just today. You're traveling with this big duffel bag, and I imagine that's maybe everything that you own.
I wish it was everything. I have a few things
You
in
have
New
a few
York and a
things,
few things
okay.
in Tallahassee
Right.
and a few things in Newcastle.
But nonetheless, I mean, do you have like a place that you call your base? I mean, it seems like you're just constantly traveling.
My Shikshaguru Niranjana Swami, like one year I went to 16 places. He said you should go to fewer places and stay longer, no more than 2 or 3, in a place where you know the language or you're willing to learn it. So I used to go to basically New York and Florida and the north of England. And then the Swami I worked with in the north of England, Janananda Maharaj, he's been focusing a lot on France.
Yeah,
So
that's where I grew up.
oh,
in
right,
France,
that's
so
right.
I'm
Oh.
familiar with that. Yeah.
So for the last, I think since 2017 or so, I've been going to Paris for 2 months in the summer, and
Okay.
for the last 2 years, I've been attempting to learn French.
Wow. Right up Parsi Shore. Those are my childhood days.
Oh, they're so special. Yeah.
That's nice. So tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do right now. As you do these different travels, you kind of have a little bit of a rotation, it sounds like, particular places that you go to. And what do you do? Like, it sounds like, I mean, I've seen your Facebook posts, right? So, today I did this in sharing Krishna consciousness. Today I did this in sharing Krishna consciousness. But tell us a little bit more of what is your intention and what does your daily life kind of look like?
Well, I like to support Srila Prabhupada's morning program, so I almost infallibly go to Mangalarati, and if I didn't get enough sleep, I just take a nap after, And I always go to Bhagavatam class, and if I have enough sleep, I go to Tulsi Puja and Guru Puja and greeting the deities. But
which, by the way, the sleep you got today was in the car on the way here. Such a beautiful demonstration of that commitment of yours.
So, I like to. I want to bring back in ISKCON the daily Harinam program, which was part of Prabhupada's program. At a certain point after these books were printed, he really pushed book distribution, and actually they wrote him, these enthusiastic book distributors, is it all right that we take everyone off Harinam and we put them all on books? And he said, well, if the authorities are restricting you doing the Harinam, it's not a problem to have people to do books, but it's always better to have 1 or 2 people chanting. And then later on, he said, again, it's always better to have 1 or 2 people chanting. And even the full-time artists who were key players in the book production, because he always wanted a certain number of pictures in every volume, he would say, do 4 or 5 hours of painting and then one or 2 hours of Sankirtan as befitting, So it was something that, and Jayadvaita Swami says even that the editors, they're also expected to go out on the Nama Sankirtan.
Okay. So you're contributing to that by making it a daily practice for you to go on Harinam?
Yeah, I go out every day, and on a travel day like today, I only did 1 hour, but usually I do 3 hours.
So a lot of times it's just you?
Only in Tallahassee, it's 90% of the time just me.
Okay. Otherwise, you have some others that join
in New
you.
York, we have a nice party. They do 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, headed by Ram Roy Prabhu, who's been doing it since 2012. And in Paris, we have a party. They always do 3 hours on Saturday and 1.5 hours on Thursday night, but there's often a dedicated team, and they do 5, 6. And nobody does 7 except me, I think. But they do 5 or 6. And Janananda Maharaj has some people. When Kadamba Kanaswami passed away, some of his people took shelter of the inspiration of Janananda Maharaj, and they've been helping out in Paris. And one of them named Yasomati Nandan, he's always ready to go on Harinam with me. So,
What are some of the experiences that you've had? I'm sure you have stories of this daily Harinam that you contribute to or participate in? What are some of the things that you've discovered on Harinam?
Well, there are people who are spontaneously attracted to the holy name. And that's not a surprise because maybe in their past life they went to a Sunday feast or they got a book and they passed away and took another birth and they're ready for the next stage. So I always feel positive that there's people out there. And also Srila Prabhupada said that the fact that Lord Chaitanya said his name will be chanted in every town and village means that there's people out there in every town and village that are ready to receive the holy name. So I always feel that there's people there, and there's different positive experiences. At one time we were singing in the Times Square subway station, and this woman, maybe in her 20s, was walking by, and she had this brilliant smile on her face as she was looking at the party. So I asked her, have you seen this before? And she said, well, I've just seen some people at Union Square. And I said, well, we're the same people. In the winter we sing in the subway stations. It seems like you have some attraction for this chanting. And she said, that sound is pure joy. So when you think about it, that's actually our philosophy, that Krishna is non-different from his holy name. And Krishna is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and his name is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. And that she was actually experiencing that sound is pure joy. So that's
so beautiful. And it makes me think of something that Mother Pranada, she does this thing called bhakti coaching.
Okay.
So I did a couple of bhakti coaching sessions with Mother Pranada. And one of the biggest takeaways for me is she said, everything, and she was talking about herself as the example. She said, everything that I do, my career, having a home, maintaining a home, taking care of my responsibilities, there's only one reason for all of that. It's to set up a place and space for me to approach Krishna in his holy name. That's the only reason for all of it.
Beautiful vision. Huh?
And so I'm connecting that with how this lady spontaneously described what the holy name is. It's pure joy, And so when we can set up an environment, whatever it may be for us as individuals, we all have completely different lives and circumstances, but, let's really put in the effort and the understanding that everything in this life, ultimately, Harinama, that's what we're meant to do, and that's why Lord Chaitanya came. And so, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure you have so many other stories. Is there another one you might want to share?
Yeah, I'll share one more, but that reminds me of the other thing I do besides Harinam is I do proofreading for Back to Godhead and for my guru, Satsrupa Das Goswami. And I proofread that amazing book by Bhakti Vikas Swami on Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And he has the most positive quote about Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtan that I ever saw in my whole life. He said, Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtan is the best sadhana. If other sadhanas help us in our Krishna Nam Sankirtan, they deserve to be called sadhana. Otherwise, they're simply impediments to sadhana. Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtan is the emperor of all sadhanas. It is the only infallible sadhana capable of bringing us to siddhi. So sometimes, the other Harinam people, they want to take a day off and read, but, I read on the train to and from the Harinam, because I think the sadhana of going out on the Harinam every day is according to that, is the ultimate sadhana.
And I think this is the perfect parallel where we can share notes, from the Grihastha ashram, taking care of our families in the best way possible, not compromising that in any way, so that we can all be happy, materially situated, and then have a good place to approach the holy name. That makes those activities sadhana, according to that.
If they assist the
right. Ultimately, if that's our intention, is to be able to approach Krishna in the holy name, because every responsibility of ours has been taken care of in full with integrity, and being a good father, being a good career person, whatever it may be, now we can properly approach the holy name because we've maintained those things. Then all those things become sadhana.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
There's one story that we were singing in a subway station in Queens, and so somebody was listening to the kirtan while she was waiting for the train. And then when the train came, she couldn't get on the train because she was so curious about what this was, She was waiting till the train comes, and she went upstairs and she looked for the party, and she ended up buying some books. That was when Mahotsa, that really powerful book distributor, was there, and she bought some books and stuff. But it's interesting that she was just grabbed by the kirtan, And then there's stories about how the people, they changed in attitude from hearing the Harinam. In Alexanderplatz in Berlin, there's these 3 girls, and they returned the invitation we gave them, and then they put cigarette butts in our donation box, which is not really not a proper way to show respect,
Right.
And then they sat in front of us and made funny faces and tried to make us laugh and distract us, But the cartel player who they gave the invitation to showed him the mantra and explained how we chant it responsively and gave it back to them. And then they chanted the mantra. And if one of them chanted the lead by accident, the other said, no, we're just supposed to chant the response,
Uh-huh.
And they chanted the mantra for a while, and then they decided that it was time to go on their way. And then they asked for some invitations to distribute.
Wow.
So they started out returning the invitation and giving us a cigarette butt, And then at 10 o'clock at night, they called the temple on the phone and they said, can you sing that song you were singing at Alexanderplatz? So it's like, you see, even in the course of a Harinam, people transform.
I'm sure you've witnessed the power of the holy name over and over. Speaking of, is it time for a kirtan break? You brought your harmonium. You said you're going to share some of your favorite tunes.
I'll just share some tunes that like. This is my favorite tune. I think it's very sweet, and I have had 2 good experiences. One time in London, people walked across the street to the other side to get an invitation because they were attracted by it. And then in New York at the Penn Station, one person was attracted, and they bought the 7-volume hardbound book we called the Saptarishi. For $50 you get 7. While I was playing this tune. So
All right.
It's my favorite tune.
Okay,
It's got like 4 parts, but this is my favorite part. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then there's some that are sort of upbeat, and they get people dancing. And
This one, by the way, for me, it's so dear to me because it's the tune of the Panchatattva installation in Mayapur.
Really? Wow.
Which, there's the video they made, just the DVD of the installation, and that's the big kirtan in that video.
Wow.
So that connects me to that special event.
There's some, they installed some Gaurani tidies in Atlanta, and Bibi Govinda Swami was there, and he sang that tune for a long time.
It's a great tune.
And then when I do like college programs, this is sort of a simple tune, and it has like 2 parts, and then you can do it double speed. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, 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 Hare.
Another great tune. So that's the one you use in colleges a lot.
Sometimes we have, programs or kirtan lecture, prasadam programs, and that's because it's easy for them to sing. And
is there one story that comes to mind from a college program?
Well, sometimes they dance, and it's always nice when they dance. I don't have an infallible way of getting them to dance, but this tune is sort of lively. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I was playing that in the Queens subway station, and we did get a bunch of people dancing.
Wonderful.
And
so
in New York,
all such classic tunes. You can't go wrong.
So if they're upbeat and they're simple, what we have, some parts are faster or slower, and some notes are longer, and it's like it's bewildering unless you're a professional musician, and you can't really expect everybody who walks by to be a professional musician.
Oh, so important. It has to be a tune that people can easily. That's the whole point, is for people to chant along.
And that's what Prabhupada taught, that incredibly simple tune. And I was at 26 Second Avenue and doing the program, and I thought, well, I'll do the evening tune. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, because we sing it at the Gaur Arati. But even that tune was hard for the people. So I just did Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And that's the only tune Prabhupada sang at that place anyway. So for the whole rest of the time I was there, I chanted that tune, and everyone was ecstatic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Kirtan at 26 Second Avenue is something
so special.
So special. And now, a word from today's episode sponsor.
Welcome to Govind & Sons Fine Jewelry.
Need a new piece of jewelry? Govinda & Sons is a family-owned and operated store, proudly led by Gopal, son of Govind, continuing a legacy built on integrity, expertise, and passion for fine jewelry. For well over 20 years, they have proudly served our community with unmatched quality, personal service, and timeless designs that celebrate life's most meaningful moments. They are more than just a jewelry store. They are designers, gem experts, and master craftsmen who create and produce their pieces in-house. Every design is thoughtfully developed and meticulously crafted under their roof, ensuring exceptional attention to detail and superior quality. All right, back to our episode. Thank you so much for everything you've shared so far. You said, just to get maybe one last bit about your background, you said there were 3 big phases to your life, kind of service phases, so to speak. What were those?
Well, basically, I lived in the ashram for the 6 months, but it was too austere, so I went back to my previous life, which was as a student in Brown University in computer science. And then I found out they had a preaching center there run by K.C. Hunter Prabhu of Alachua. And so actually, when I was in 55th Street, Hamsa Rupa was there running the restaurant. So,
by the way, we had K.C. Hunter Prabhu on the podcast.
He's a very entertaining person. He was very tolerant of me. I was thanking him for his tolerance. So I got a degree in computer science, and I was going to maintain the Providence Center by getting a job. But this devotee, who is very famous in ISKCON, Adi Keshava, stepped down from the GBC and from sannyas and got married and started a computer business and made a deal with K.C. Hunter that I would work for his business and the temple would get some money. So I went to work with him. And he was based in Fairfield, New Jersey.
Okay.
And some of the time I lived in Tuaco, where Mother Nanda was the head cook. and he was very conscientious about making sure I got plenty of prasadam.
And I want everyone to take note that right now, when I asked Krishna Kripa Prabhu in the car what he's hoping to get out of this podcast, he said to glorify some Vaishnavas. And I know right now you're listing some of your favorite devotees who happen to be in Alachua.
And then I moved to Philadelphia, and Shesha Prabhu was my temple president. And infallibly, every morning it was at Mangalarati, and for the whole japa session, he would walk back and forth in front of the deity curtains chanting japa. He was like a rock,
I was just visiting with him and Mother Manumati yesterday.
Oh, special people, yeah. And then Stida D. Muni was our temple commander. Yeah.
Stida D. Muni is the devotee that taught me any round is a good round.
Oh, man, that's great.
When I was struggling with my japa.
That's
he's one
line.
of my japa gurus.
That's a great line. I have to remember that. Yeah.
So you worked as a computer...
I was writing accounting software, which was
Okay.
truly boring because I was a scientist.
Mhm.
And after 6 years, I decided that I should do something else. And Sridhar Swami encouraged me. And he said, yeah, Prabhupada said a brahmachari should only do something for 3 years. You should do something else. And then I checked out the BI because I was really into science. I thought I should work with Bhaktivedanta Institute. So I went to Bombay and saw Rasiraj, and I went to San Diego and I saw Sadhaputta Prabhu.
Uh-huh.
And he was making videos then, and he used this software that would write one video frame at a time on a tape, which takes a long time because there's 30 frames in a second. There's like 54,000 frames in a half hour. But while I was there, I figured out how to write the routine in assembly language, so it was 3 times faster. So I could see how I could fit in with his program. And he had a fired-up brahmachari assistant who loved to hear and chant about Krishna and go on Harinama. And so I could really see, and they had college preaching in a couple of colleges, so I could really see how I could fit into his program. Whereas Rasiraj in Mumbai, like, India's another kind of place for me, and I wasn't really sure how I would fit in. But and Kundali said he encouraged me to go with Sadhaputta. He said, if anybody does anything serious in science, it's going to be Sadhaputta.
Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit about your time with him and a little bit about him, because I suffer from this disease called, whatever you want to call it, book aversion, or I'm not a big reader, but I'm interested, and I try to read or listen to books. But, I haven't read really any of Sadhaputta's books cover to cover, but I've heard so much about him from my parents, especially my mother. And obviously the whole world of the BI is fascinating. But what could you share about him as a person, since you got to spend time with him? Give us a little insight into who he was.
He was a super serious person, and he was a super fair person. He didn't like people jiving him around, like promising him some facility and then not living up to it. And he himself was very straightforward in his dealings, and he was a real genius. The funny thing is that by working with Sadhaputta, I realized that I wasn't a scientist, I was just a guy who liked science. But he was a real scientist.
That's funny. Yeah, right.
And the funny thing was that Stida D. Muni, he worked as Sadhaputta's secretary. And he ended up going back to school and going through, undergraduate, master's, and getting a PhD in history of science. So he realized he was a scientist, and I realized that I wasn't. But it was fascinating working with him. And before I went to work with him, I thought, when Prabhupada said these scientists are cheaters, I thought, because we know from the Shastra that God is the source of everything, and they're trying to explain everything without God in that sense, in that philosophical sense, they're cheaters. But I worked on the production of Forbidden Archaeology. And that book is 960 pages and 141 illustrations. And I was the typesetter. And before that, I just did one-page flyers But Yamaraj and Dravida Prabhus, they taught me typesetting, and I typeset that book. So like, I may be the only person who's read it 4 times, you know? But it's amazing.
The title itself is just so captivating. Does that book, is it still very relevant today, would you say, in today's science world? Because I often think, like, even though, you know, I'll be honest, I haven't read it myself, but I feel like just for the title, I should pass it along.
Yeah, well, it makes a very interesting point. See, Darwin came out with this theory in 1859, and then scientists were looking for this missing link between apes and humans. So in the 1890s, a guy named Dubois found Java man, which was ultimately classified as a Homo erectus, something between humans and apes, in the Middle Pleistocene, something around 800,000 years old. So, but there was a period of time between 1859 and the 1890s when people were digging around in the ground and reporting the different artifacts that were complicated enough to have been made by human beings. And they didn't know how to date the strata, but they just gave it names. There was, after the Pleistocene was the Pliocene, and then there was the Miocene and the Oligocene and the Eocene. And they would just say, in the middle Miocene, we found this, you know, this stone tool or something. And it wasn't just, it was several scientists in several different places and finding probably dozens of these tools that were dated at 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, and even some 30 million years old, you know?
Wow.
But they either discredited them or they just stopped talking about them. But through interlibrary loan, Judakarma and Sadhaputta got the original descriptions of the finds by the scientists themselves, telling about how they found these things. So basically, the way the scientific method works is if you find some evidence that doesn't fit in with a theory, you broaden the theory. So it now explains all the new evidence. But if what happens is if you get some evidence that doesn't fit in with a theory, if you discredit the evidence to maintain a theory, that means you have blind faith in a theory that has evidence against it. Right. So that is like foolish. I mean, he calls them fools and rascals. That is foolish, big time, you know? So, I mean, and so because they're not accepted, the book isn't accepted by the archaeological community because they're not archaeologists, you know? The Judakarma is a writer and Sadhaputta is a PhD in mathematics. And nobody in that field could write such a book because they would lose their job. So
he's kind of a pioneer in just going there in a sense and having no reservations as far as where he sits in the science world, would you say? Is it a little bit of how he operates?
He knew that in fact, they predicted how the scientific community would deal with their work and by how they dealt with other sorts of things. But basically, he felt that Srila Prabhupada wanted, you know, him, the BI scientist, to show how there's flaws in these theories that purport to explain everything without God, and so they actually did that in that case, and it's
how much of the work would you say is geared towards helping accept the presence of a God versus what the Vedic knowledge has to offer? Is that kind of two components of what?
Yeah, with that book, they basically wanted to show that human beings had been around for a long time.
Okay.
Basically, they argued that there's a knowledge filter that eliminated certain evidence, and if you don't have that knowledge filter, it looks like there've been humans for a long time, ape men for a long time, and apes for a long time, and there's still apes, and there's still ape men, and there's still humans. And he talks about the Sasquatch and the Almas and the Yeti, which are 8 men that people say are still existing and they say they've seen, and
Yeah.
that.
Well, listen, as far as I'm concerned, you are a scientist.
I don't know. So then, because of the result of working on that book, I realized that actually they are cheating,
Yeah.
knowingly
Right.
or unknowingly. Some they may be innocently neglecting these previous finds. Some of them don't
Right.
know about it, but in some cases they would know about it, and there was one case. There was a lady there was a site in Mexico that this geologist dated using 4 different methods to 250,000 years. Now, it's rare that all the methods give the same date, but they think that from the old world, Europe, Asia, Africa, maybe between 10 and 30,000 years, man came to the New World, the Americas. So anything that's older than 30,000 years is way anomalous. What to speak of 250,000. So she, they wouldn't print her findings. She tried to publish it. They wouldn't print it. They took away her microscope. She lost her job, and she couldn't get a job in that field, But all she did was just, because she didn't realize how attached the archaeologists were to their idea.
Right, to what they've come up with.
Right.
Yeah.
And even Leakey himself, who's one of the most famous archaeologists, Louis Leakey, he found something in Calico, California, many things that were 200,000 years, and even he couldn't get them accepted, despite his fame for being one of the first, big-time archaeologists. So it's just, so I feel they've vindicated Prabhupada's words for, well, they really are fools and rascals.
Yeah.
They really are cheating, not just in a philosophical sense, but they're not even following their own scientific method.
Right. Yeah.
And they're claiming to have, authoritative knowledge when they have blind faith in a theory that has evidence against it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, as of this recording, Artemis 2 is on its way back from doing a loop around the moon. Have you been following that at all? I'm curious if you have any feelings about that
I'm such
mission.
a rascal. I'm such a rascal. I don't keep up with the news, unfortunately.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, they've sent a crew of 4 to go do one loop on the around the moon. So there's all these
dark side of the moon. Huh?
Oh yeah, all these photos are being
Wow.
posted about that's the farthest that man has traveled, and
Wow.
it's preparing them to go back on the moon. So
Wow.
yeah, very exciting time in space exploration right now.
It's to distract us from all the wars on the Earth.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so
Speaking as a son of a peace activist.
right. Thanks for that little segment on your science background. It's really fascinating. I can see how passionate you are about it, and it's just an incredible part of Prabhupada's movement that's exploring all that and bringing about very important information for people to connect,
Just one last thing I could say about that. This devotee, Eddie, who got initiated as Indupati, he did the 3D graphics for Sadhapura. And he asked him one time, there's so many far-out things in the Vedic literature. How can you accept it? And without hesitation, he said, because it can explain so many things. And when you think about it, there's, so many things like, for example, near-death experiences, past life memories, right. UFOs, ghosts, extraterrestrials, all kinds of things that have been reported in different cultures at different times. Demigod worship, which is there like all over the planet, Mm-hmm. So many things are explained in one comprehensive worldview.
Right.
That even though there are a lot of things that are supernatural that we don't actually understand how they work, there's no other comprehensive explanation that we know exists. Like this Vedic literature.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, and I often bring that up at work when always my foundational sentence when I see someone's interested in spirituality, we get into it I say, the human condition is that we're eternal souls trapped in a temporary body, and right away they're like, yeah. That makes sense. I agree with that. And then from there, you can get into. So I often bring up, well, so what does that mean? And now we have clear evidence with all these out-of-body experiences that have been tracked by, scientists who've made a whole career out of it, like Ian Stevenson and all that. So, yeah, no, it's fascinating and it's exciting to get into that with people.
Ian Stevenson, his best cases, his most amazing cases are that sometimes the person, they were like murdered in the previous life.
Yeah. And
they have the autopsy records, and the kid in the next life has like a birthmark where the bullet went in, where the bullet went. I mean, that's like incredible, It's like, physical evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Well, we're coming up on an hour, just a little time stamp. Doesn't mean we have to wrap it up, but trying to see what else. Any other devotees you wish to glorify while we're here that you haven't mentioned yet that were significant to you in your life?
Yeah, well, that Niranjana Swami, I'm here by his prayers. Satsut Maharaj is an amazing personality, and he's written so many books about Prabhupada. His association with Prabhupada touched him so deeply. He wrote like 16 books, And he said just one meeting with Prabhupada at 26 2nd Avenue, he gave up, illicit sex intoxication and became vegetarian. That was the powerful presence of Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
So he's like, because when I joined in 79, planting the seed, that second volume of the Lilamrita about Prabhupada at 26 2nd Avenue. It was coming out.
I just finished hearing the Lilamrita thanks to our friend Kendra Prabhu.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Just finished it like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and that's really, he in a big way gave me so much faith in Prabhupada from his, sharing not only the Lilamrita but all the other books. And right now I'm proofreading because they're reprinting ISKCON in the 1970s. And it has a lot of notes on Prabhupada lectures, and just hearing the relevance of these points that Prabhupada makes to our lives and our practice and our preaching even now. It's so powerful. So many things I'm writing down and putting in my journal that he wrote back in the 70s as he was taking notes on his travels with Prabhupada.
That's great. Speaking of...
Indradyumna Swami is another person.
Indradyumna Swami, he goes back for me.
Oh,
he's the first crowd surfer I ever saw.
Oh, right.
In New Mayapur,
funny.
I was,
Wow.
I don't know, 8 years old, and big festivals, and I remember him just jumping into the crowd and crowd surfing. And he's one of my childhood swamis. Yeah, very special. Do you get to see him often?
I went on his, he has that preaching in Poland.
Yeah.
I mean, he did it
Polish
till
Woodstock.
recently. Yeah. I went to that Polish Woodstock 19 times.
Wow.
Because I never saw so many Westerners come in touch with kirtan and prasadam. 300,000 to 700,000 people would go to that event.
See, if you were married, you could not have gone 19 times.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that.
Yeah, and I don't even have any like people who regularly give me donations or anything. It's just every year somehow or other I had enough money to go to Europe, and it was just incredible. They would have like the best kirtan people. They would have Shiva Ramaswamy and Madhava and Badahari and Achyuta Gopi and B.B. Govinda Swami and singing from like 5 in the afternoon to like 2 in the morning. I remember one year the first day we ended at 1:30, the next day we ended at 2:30, the next day we ended at 3:30, and the last day we ended at 4:30. We'd have a whole tent full of people singing and dancing, and I would pass out the Polish mantra cards to anyone, and they would say, text, and they practically embrace you because they're, it's, yeah.
And then weren't you participating in the rainbow gatherings as well?
I mean, I went to some.
Some of those?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting there was one I went to with the Vaishnav Youth Bus Tour, and there was this girl who came up to me saying she liked my dancing, and she signed my book, The Dancing Alicia, And the next time I went to New Vrindavan for the Festival of Inspiration, she was living there.
Wow.
And then when I went to Mayapur to take the Bhakti Vaibhava, she was taking the Bhakti Shastri. And when
Just by your dancing.
no,
Just by your dancing.
No, Balam Chandra preached to her in the New Vrindavan. But anyway, then I went to Krishna House, and she was in charge of the ladies' ashram and the academics, and initiated by Hridayananda Goswami.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
wow, and it's so wonderful to see some of these people who, become attracted from those things.
Yeah. You mentioned how you just happened to be able to go. You don't accept or it's not that you ask for regular donations. It makes me think about how the lifestyle that you've chosen and that you seem to really live so well and kind of exemplify it, this brahmachari lifestyle, must be so founded on this total dependence on Krishna, in so many ways. Is there anything you can share on that level, how you've had to, I'm sure in beautiful ways and maybe sometimes in painful ways, had to just surrender for your livelihood to Krishna? Is there anything you can share about that?
Well, there's one purport in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita where Prabhupada said that the devotee doesn't have to worry about how to keep body and soul together. Krishna will see to that, And of course, that was his experience, because he was, living in Vrindavan, producing all those volumes of the Bhagavatam without any, just scraping by somehow or other. Krishna was sending him just whatever he needed to do his thing, and then he made that arrangement for the cargo ship ride over here. So he was saying that from his experience, but I can see basically in retrospect that Krishna is doing that for me. And I remember once I only had $17 and I was in Jacksonville and I didn't have enough for money for a bus back to Gainesville. So I invited some of my friends in Gainesville to do Harinama with me at University of North Florida. And this guy named Tim Carter, or Gopinath he was called, and his daughter Vrindavan, they came up to do Harinam with me and drive me back to Gainesville, so I didn't have to. And then that Braja Vilas, who was living here at that time before he took over the fundraising for the planetarium, and then he gave me $40, and then so that was like as low as I got. I mean, actually, once I was in India without a ticket, and Kalakanta paid half and my mom paid half, so I could come back. But then I was in India again because it was a round-trip ticket. But then my mother, she visited me in India, and the British Airways lost her luggage, so she had $300 credit, and then I had some cash. Then I made it to London. So, so I did get sort of low at a couple of times,
right.
But somehow people bailed me out.
No, and it's true that so much of Krishna's hand is sometimes easier to see in retrospect.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that too.
I mean, one time, Gopi Puranadana's son came on the Polish tour, and his next step was to go visit his grandmother in Lviv, and they wanted Indradurma Swami to just send him. He was 10 years old, just send him on his own, And Indradurma Swami thought that was completely irresponsible, so he thought of the least important person on his staff, namely me, and sent me with him. So I went like 16 hours on the train to the bottom and then over to Lviv, dropped him off, and then I had to go back, And the last
it's like the flight attendants on the airplanes taking care of the unaccompanied minors.
Yeah, really. and it was like 7:30, and the last train out of the Polish border town was 10. And I was playing this Prabhupada lecture, and Prabhupada was saying that the devotee has faith that, that Krishna is in control, and that Krishna's taking care of him. And I was in complete anxiety that if I missed this train, I'd have to stay up till the next one at 4 o'clock in the morning at this train station on the border. And I could get held up on the Ukrainian side of the border. I could get held up on the Polish side of the border. There could not be the little mini bus that goes from the border to the train station. So I was hearing this Prabhupada saying, yeah, the pure devotee, he's not disturbed at all because he's convinced that, whereas I was like, freaking out even though I was hearing this pure katha, and
Right.
I got there like 3 minutes before the train left.
Wow.
But it was interesting to see
Yeah.
that juxtaposition,
Right.
Prabhupada's complete conviction and me just hearing about it but not being quite there mentally.
Yeah. But it's good. You're practicing it, by remembering how Prabhupada was able to do that. Yeah, thank you for sharing those little insights.
The other thing I wanted to tell you, that story about how how all these people moved from San Diego to Alachua.
Yes, yeah, you were sharing something quite. I had never heard that about one of the origins of Alachua. Yeah, please tell us about that.
Yeah. That the story, as I've heard it, is that Pranada was researching, and she found out that for the price that we're spending on our rents in San Diego, you could buy 5 acres of land and put a double-wide mobile home on it. So within like a year, 4 ISKCON organizations, Back to Godhead, ISKCON Foundation, Bhaktivedanta Institute, and Hare Krishna World, all moved from San Diego to Alachua.
Is that the mobile home that used to be Krishna.com? Was that
the one that's on the property?
Yeah, was that the original lot? Wow.
Yeah, and that blue one, which was
Exactly.
the VI one,
Yeah.
And then that Naveen Krishna had his ISKCON Foundation.
Yeah.
I can't remember where the Hare Krishna was.
Yeah, that's a podcast that we're often told we have to do. It is to get all of the originals who started Alachua and get the full story. So we're hoping to do that one day.
Yeah, I was telling you about how I knew all these people from Alachua, from different temples. I mentioned them all except San Diego. That I knew Mahatma Prabhu from the San Diego, and I knew this Pran Govinda.
Oh yeah.
He had a previous name then. Param Brahma was his name.
Oh yeah.
And he was involved in the life membership.
Uh-huh.
And I always liked to have an evening class. So I would ask him to give class in the evening, and he said he was too busy, And now he's like giving class everywhere and anywhere. But there I couldn't drag one class out of him.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'd get Trividata and Archita and Druta Karma to give class, but I could never get this former.
He's giving classes now.
Yeah. You got a taste. Yeah.
He's also, running the morning program show, giving big hugs to anyone who shows up and making us feel at home. So.
And that Vaikuntha, very sweet devotee. I knew him from San Diego. And he was doing college preaching, and I did college preaching with him. And it was beautiful. He would oversee the Bhakta program too and encourage the new people. Yeah.
Well, thank you for glorifying all these Vaishnavas that are dear to you and that are part of this community as well. I think we should wrap it up because Uddhava told us we have a hard limit on one of our cameras that's going to shut off automatically at 1 hour and 20 minutes. But there's one last thing you had mentioned on the way in is that, you wanted to share some of your favorite verses. And that even you had, I believe, memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita. Tell us a little bit about your memorization process, and please share some of the verses that are dear to you.
Okay, well, my enthusiasm to memorize chapters of Bhagavad Gita came from Mahavishnu Goswami of Gujarat, who came through San Diego, encouraging us to memorize chapters 12 and 15, which are the shortest ones. And and then I would ask him every year for another one, and gradually it built up. But one of the ones I really liked is Ananya Cheta Sadatam Yomam Smarti Nityasa Tasyam Sulabha Parta Nitya Yuktasya Yogina. And it's not just a famous verse, it's 8:14. To those who are constantly engaged in remembering me, I'm easy to obtain because of their constant engagement in devotional service. So he's saying he's easy to obtain. So sometimes we feel like Krishna's not so easy to obtain, right? So here he gives a clue. If you just think of me all the time, you can easily attain me. You know?
Do you happen to remember the number of that verse?
Yeah, that's 814.
814.
And apparently there was a diary or a journal of that of Jayananda Prabhu of the Rath Yatra fame, and that verse was in his book. So apparently, I'm not the only person who like that.
No, I mean, gosh, why wouldn't that be at our top of our list? You know, that Krishna is easily achievable. You know, in that process of remembering him. Yeah, that's so important to remember.
One of the most important verses I know, it's not from the Gita, but it's from the Kali Santana Upanishad. It's a conversation between Lord Brahma and Narada, who are key people in our sampradaya. And Narada's asking Lord Brahma, what's the most powerful spiritual practice in this age? And Lord Brahma says, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti Shadashakam Nam Nam. These 16 names, Kali Kamasha Nashanam, destroy all the impurities of this age of Kali. Nata Paratropaya, you won't find a superior process. Sarva Vedeshu Drishati, if you look through all the Vedas. So Srila Prabhupada, he was pushing this mantra. Some people even make up new mantras and add them to the kirtan, but Prabhupada on Harinam, this was the mantra, you know, and it really is the mantra. That's why we're called the Hare Krishna movement. And why? Because it's going to destroy all the impurities of the age of Kali. That's the thing that our Sampradaya Acharyas, you know, Brahma and Narada are recommending to us, and our, you know, most recent founder Acharya link, Srila Prabhupada, has given us. So we shouldn't minimize it in any way. It's so important, you know. And he says on the record album, and it's you know, approved by authorities for this age, right? So these are authorities, and Brahma and Narada. So never forget that.
Krishna Kripa Babu, I'm so grateful to you, and I feel like the holy name has been a part of this discussion all along, and I think this is such a wonderful ending note that, you know, I mean, I think anyone who hears you speak with such, you know, genuine conviction and philosophical authority will have a very strong, renewed faith in the holy name, and there's nothing better we could be doing here.
The holy name will not let you down. Other personalities may not live up to our expectations, but we can count on Sri Harinama and that beautiful quote by the Bhakti Siddhanta, you know. The Emperor of all sadhanas, the only infallible sadhana, bringing us to Siddhi.
Where can that quote of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati be found?
It's in that Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava.
Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava.
Of Bhakti Vikas Swami. I think it's in the first volume.
Okay. Yeah, that I would love to go and look for as well. That was another very powerful point that you made. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.